packet pushers.
Welcome to Day 2 DevOps, where the DevOps is in the details. I'm Ned Bellavance, and on Day 2 DevOps, we explore those details and how you can learn from the mistakes of others and build a solid DevOps practice on day 1 and beyond. With me on this journey of learning and doing is my co-host, Kyler Middleton. Hi, Kyler.
Hi, Ned. These days, we are firmly entrenched in a hybrid cloud world composed of satellite offices, on-prem data centers, multiple cloud platforms, and wandering clients connecting via VPN. The common substrate among all these locations is the network. But unfortunately, every cloud provider has their own network implementation, and your on-prem network is probably in a similar boat. Managing, monitoring, and securing all of that connectivity is a huge challenge, and that's why we're talking to our friends at Alkira today.
You and I were just talking about how there's these tools that you expect if you come from an on-prem networking background. You get to the cloud and they're all just missing. And you're like, it's 2024. How is this stuff still not here? Well, the answer is it is. You just can't rely on the native support for it. And that's why we are speaking to Misbah Raymond, the Director of Product Management, and previous Day 2 DevOps guest William Collins, who's the Director of Tech Evangelism at Alkira. We're going to talk about the challenges of managing hybrid and multi-cloud, how Alkira eases that burden, and some additional benefits you receive when you have a holistic view of your network. Without further ado, let's get started with William and Misbah from Alkira. Well, Misbah, welcome to Day 2 DevOps. We're very excited to talk to you and Will about all things Alkira. Let's start with, for those who aren't familiar, what is Alkira? Give me that elevator pitch.
Thanks, Ned. Thanks, Kyler, for giving us the opportunity. I'll try to summarize how we are trying to help our customer with our solution. So basically, Alkira is a network platform, and it is an on-demand platform offered as a service and with integrated security and network services. And let me expand, what do I mean with that, right? When it comes to the customers today have to build their network for capacity. They have to bring in high CapEx spends in order to build the network to support it, right? So the on-demand aspects provide you an opportunity to do it in a pay-as-you-go fashion. Secondly, at the same time, the applications are moving from data center to the cloud. Now, what happens is all your application epicenter becomes cloud. So you definitely need simplicity in cloud networking to deploy those applications. But your connectivity patterns are still the same. You still have the users. You still have your branch sites. Even though branch sites are going away, users are becoming branches, but branches in today's world still exist. You have retail stores. So you not only have to simplify networking inside the cloud, you have to simplify connectivity at scale from the on-prem and the users to the cloud. And that's the glue that Alkira provides. Alkira sits in the middle where it solves the use cases of multi-cloud networking that today's application needs. It helps enterprise to bring that connectivity to the cloud at scale. One of the examples that I want to give, one of the retailer that we're working with, we are actually working on a project to bring 1,000 stores to their application that sits in the cloud. So it's not only doing cloud networking, simplifying networking and application, but it also doing branch connectivity at scale. And this is huge for the enterprises. And then on top of it, you want to have the same security posture within the cloud. As the users or the application accessing each other, you have to have a same security posture. And for that, the integrated security, partnering with different vendors, where we offer a marketplace, they can come and simply consume those services and have the same security posture that they have at other places to extend it into the cloud. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any other questions about what we do, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I'm thinking basic, just even single cloud networking in AWS, it's n squared for the number of VPC peers you're trying to connect together. And that doesn't include security. And now we have transit gateways, but that doesn't include security either. So what is the main problem that Alkira is trying to solve? Is it connecting clouds together? Is it security? What's the main problem there?
You asked the perfect question. So you talked about Transit Gateway, but Transit Gateway only works for AWS. What do I need for Azure, vWAN? What do I need for Google, NCC? Same goes with OCI. So you don't have a one universal transit for all the cloud service provider, right? So one of the benefits, and then once you have multi-cloud and you are just an acquisition of it or an application that needs to be run in another cloud provider to be a multi-cloud, right? You can be a single cloud enterprise, but you can be a multi-cloud. Just one of those impending event can cause it, right? So what we offer is a unified connectivity platform for all the cloud service provider. From a customer perspective or from an enterprise perspective, he doesn't have to think whether he's connecting an AWS VNet, an AWS VPC, Google VPC. For him, it's just a cloud connector. And it is the same standard way of connecting those cloud connectors to the CXP. So first, we are solving a multi-cloud connectivity problem where you have one unified transit gateway, like where you can basically terminate all your cloud service provider. Now, the next comes security. Now, if I have to offer security in the previous scenario with cloud native, I would need 4 set of pairs of firewalls to support security across all cloud service provider. And if I'm hopping cloud, I'm traversing the firewall twice. Now you have a universal transit for all the cloud service provider. All I need is a pair of firewall. So we are offering security, standardized security, which is cheaper, better, and more efficient. And we take the mundane work out of customers or somebody, a network engineer, trying to do those mundane tasks of connectivity. And even then, it's not an optimal connectivity. We abstract all the complexity, but gives the power to the network engineer that you can deploy it the way you want to deploy it, but you don't have to worry about the mundane tasks.
I'm thinking of when I was a kid, like 7, 8 years old, watching the news, and it's 8 p.m. and the news comes on and it says it's 8 p.m. Do you know where your kids are? Except now it's, do you know where your packets are? And it sounds like that's what Alkira does. That's the answer. I love that. That sounds wonderful.
I love that. We need to bring you into marketing. That was great.
You got it.
Another thing too is transformation. Kyler and I know this, so we worked together, funny enough, a long, long time ago. Kyler actually saved me a few times with some really complicated firewall stuff. Thank you publicly for that, by the way.
You're very welcome.
Transformation isn't a project. It's not like an 8-month thing that you do and you're done. It really is a journey. And one of the things that we do is we make it really simple to begin that journey by meeting you, where you are today. Like, are you using some SD-WAN solution? What are you using on premises for your incident response process? Like, have you chosen a security vendor? So we make it easy to take a lot of that investment that you've already put into your business and scale it across the cloud providers. In modern day networking, it's got to evolve to account for this gigantic explosion of scenarios, that span your data centers on premises, that span public cloud providers, partner networking, ZTNA, secure access, by also scaling at the pace of your business as well and ensuring like high availability and disaster recovery. And one of the things that you get with a service like Alkira is when you go to AWS or you go to Azure or you go to GCP, they all have like sort of a different approach to how to get as many nines as possible. How do you maintain high availability? And so you're thinking, okay, I've got to deploy this thing. And okay, I need to do this across availability zones here to meet X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, now we're multi-region. Okay, maybe we're active across regions. So you have all this combinations of different scenarios. And one thing about Alkira is when you connect that VPC, we're leveraging all of the stuff underneath the hood to get you as highly available as possible. So that comes like out of the box. That's a whole world of stuff that you don't have to think about anymore when you use us.
I want to ask about the abstraction layer because there's 2 problems that I usually encounter with the abstraction. One, you lose the underlying functionality, which might be the reason you went to that cloud in the first place. I like the way that Azure does their VNets, or I like the way that Google does that sort of global VPC. And the other problem with the abstractions is they can be leaky. That can be problematic when you're trying to interact with it. So how do you sort of balance those problems with abstraction of these different network types, but presented in a consistent way to the end user?
From a customer perspective, right? Think of customers' requirement, right? And that's how we think about building those abstractions. And all the cloud native tools are actually built to actually provide you different ways of connecting those cloud applications to your network. So for instance, customer would come in, I need 1 gig connectivity from a VPC to another VPC. I need 100 meg connectivity, right? I want it to be in a particular segment. I want to enforce those policies and all that. In order to achieve those, like for instance, if I talk about BGW, just as an example, you can only give 1.5 gig per IPsec connection. Now, if you want to do higher, you either do VPC peering or you do transit gateway with ECMP, just as an example, right? Now, that options from a customer perspective, all those flexibilities are there from a t-shirt sizing perspective. Like you can do 100 meg, you can do 1 gig, you can do 10 gig, right? What we want to make sure that we use the solution which is cost effective and delivers the business outcome that the customers are looking for. And you're absolutely right. Like some customers could say that I do not need security because all those VPCs are doing is doing backups of my databases, right? I do not want it. It's the same business unit. Can you do a direct VPC peering? So we leverage cloud native tools and we give customers those options and flexibility across the board. It's not like a black box where there is one way of doing it, which is the Alkira way. We embrace all the cloud native ways, but at the same time, those ways are abstracted because if you need 10 gig, you need 10 gig. You don't care about whether you do it through transit gateway. Under the hood, that we would be spinning up those cloud native constructs to deliver those for all the option. And as cloud adds new cloud native tools, we add those as part of our features. So the cloud connector is a very comprehensive set of options, like would be there in the cloud connector, where you could do the way you want to do it. And that's where I used like one of the things where it's a platform where the platform is offered as a service, but you have the leverage and the flexibility to configure it the way you want to do it for your business. So all those cloud native options are there, but they're abstracted from a complexity perspective.
I like the idea of a more declarative approach to what I need out of my networking. And the way that you're describing it is if I'm not super deep into the technical details of a particular cloud, I can describe what I need in terms of raw networking. Then you can interpret that need in such a way that it actually makes it happen on that cloud in the way that's appropriate to do it for that cloud.
True intent-based networking is here.
Oh, you went there.
All of these tools, these modern tools for DevOps and operations, it seems like declarative is winning. Like you just say, I want it to be like this, and these intelligent tools like Alkira make it happen. That's very cool.
Yep.
So how do I interact with Alkira? I mean, I'm assuming there's a robust UI for it, but I'm a DevOps engineer. I like to use automation tools. I like to maybe Terraform some things. How do I interact with this solution, maybe from a more declarative approach?
We got the guru here. He has numerous customers with Terraforms and integrating it to their CI/CD pipeline.
It's my favorite thing to do. It's the more fun side of things. But to kind of take one step back, you think about like there's, many solutions out there today. They've been around for like a long time and they like started with hardware way back. Their products have evolved over time and they're increasingly trying to make all those attempts to become like more software driven. So we kind of had I don't want to call it a cheat code, but we started out in the age of cloud. So as a product, we're grounded on like modern principles of distributed software. I would say like architecture is our North Star. So as far as like automation is concerned, you can think of it like this. I guess directly to your question, we have three main components that any technical practitioner can interact with. So they can go the route of the user interface and, go the ClickOps direction, or they may want to interact with an API directly. They may just want to code and their preferred language of choice that they've already adopted for that, in that enterprise. These days, I see a lot of Python still really, and some Go, Go is becoming more popular. And to ease, I guess, the burden of managing lots of complex infrastructure, you could use the UI, you could directly API. But as things get more complex and you have more integration across like more vendors and platforms, you try to scale. Many organizations out there are opting to use tools like Terraform. I mean, in fact, I would say that Terraform is probably the primary tool of choice at this point that I see getting adopted across large enterprise for infrastructure as code. So since Alkira is a platform, is software, our team has put in like an incredible amount of forethought to make sure that the experience across each of these methods or each of these interaction surfaces, whether it be the portal, the API, Terraform, is consistent. It's reliable. And more than anything, it meets like a level of quality standard by the time that these components make it to customers. And, at least on the Terraform side, all of this is made possible through really comprehensive testing in lower level environments with Terraform. So with Terraform, if you think about, we have our backend API and Terraform is like a higher level abstraction that you can interact with that makes it much easier. You don't have to be a coder to use Terraform, although sometimes it may seem like it. But
Mhm.
everything that you do in our platform from a ClickOps perspective has parity into the Terraform provider. So as we're maturing and we're growing our product, as is, of course, it's all being driven by the backend systems that we have, the backend, think microservices and APIs, which end up making their way to the Terraform provider. So when you think of like a lot of these complex workflows, and I think this is where we're really a differentiator, is we have scenarios where enterprise is complicated. We all know that. I came from enterprise. The best practice for doing things is typically not what you find in a really large Fortune 50 company. So being flexible and being able to bring in different areas. So say you're connecting a data center. You have IPsec or maybe one of the SD-WAN providers. So you want to take that and you have a certain onboarding process to bring up a new environment to where this comes up on the on-prem side. We have a policy that we build within the Alkira platform. And then we're also connecting a cloud network. Maybe we're building it. We're doing, the subnets. We're doing everything end to end from a networking perspective. All that can be done as infrastructure as code. And since we're a little bit of a higher level abstraction, it's actually much more simple. So when I was going and writing things in multi-cloud environments with Terraform, like say AWS and Azure, and then also like trying to bolt on things from on-premises, I had a combination of all sorts of different tools and platforms, and I still wasn't getting an end-to-end automated experience. But with us, since we're also providing that cloud backbone and we're instantiating and integrating all these services, it's literally one pipeline to do all of this. And it's not even a ton of lines of code, which makes it really simple.
Now, most people aren't there today. They don't have Alkira in their environment. They have something they've cobbled together over time. Maybe it has a couple different clouds, definitely at least, one big data center and some branch offices. What does it look like to roll out Alkira in that environment and get it integrated?
This is key, right? For not just Alkira, but for any new solution, because we will never get a greenfield environment. It has to be a brownfield. And I think that's where, whenever I talk to the customer, the comprehensive and the completeness of the solution comes into the picture, right? It's not only just mere connectors, it also has the BGP stack, the routing policies, and all that stuff that we can take care of, like active standby routes, like active routes. So the way we interact is like, let's suppose today you have a data center. Just as an example, all connectivity is through that data center to the cloud. So just as part of a simple example, the data center can be the first thing that can connect to Alkira. Now, slowly, you can start to peel off one cloud VPC at a time and bring it on the other side, which is the Alkira Cloud Connector. Now, either you can dynamically learn through routing, if it's all the specific routes that, okay, now I'm learning from data center, now it has migrated to the other side. Now I'm learning from the Alkira, and slowly you migrate everything and then decommission the data center side of the things. Or if you're doing aggregate routing, right? So we can use route policies, block routes inbound, advertise on the other side. So we have like full migration guide. Any kind of network you have, if you are learning it from multiple data centers, whether you have multiple clouds, whether you are connected through Colo. So we have run through all those scenarios with like all the different deployments, and it has always been a brownfield. And I think those knobs that we have in terms of doing traffic engineering, route manipulation, and all that stuff, it's a full-blown networking platform that is capable of taking care of any enterprise-grade routing needs. And that's how we bring in any environment and slowly peel off from their existing environment to Alkira.
So I have my legacy network, everything's working. I have BGP and MPLS, and we put in some shiny new Alkira, and then you can peer network-wise, like BGP or OSPF-wise with legacy and receive those routes?
Yep. And it is at scale. Like the platform can support thousands of routes. And that's where we sometimes overcome the cloud limitation too. I'll give you one example. Like let's suppose you have a data center. You're bringing in a direct connect. Direct connect has limitation. You can only have 1,000 routes. But the way we connect to the direct connect, we directly peer with the customer router onto Alkira. And on Alkira, you can have thousands of routes. Like we can just bring in your complete enterprise route table. So when you asked about cloud native, I think that's a good point here. We leverage cloud native where it's beneficial, and we work around the limitation, because from a connectivity and networking perspective, cloud native does have a lot of limitation, like segmentation, VRF, and all that. You can do it. Now, if you want to separate your partner from your corporate network, you can't do it in the cloud. You have to build two parallel networks. So we leverage cloud native tools, and where the cloud has limitation, we overcome that because we terminate those connections onto Alkira.
Sounds really powerful. I'm still surprised by the sort of basic tool set you get from clouds. Like there's not even the concept of weighted routes, much less VRFs. I think if you pitch VRFs to a cloud provider, they would just go pale. So being able to extend those powerful, like native network functionalities sounds very powerful and very enterprise friendly.
Yep. And one of the biggest use cases that we have seen, and that's where again the brownfield migration comes into the picture, is the partner integration. We did not realize that how much of a problem and the pain is for these enterprises to securely terminate those partners into their network, because they only need one, or from their network, they would probably in some cases need application that is running within the partner network and then partners trying to access their application. And they just wanted to give a limited exposure, right? Today, there's like such an expensive solution and less optimal solution. And now in some cases, this was the starting point. Customers like, I really like it, but I don't want to do it in my main network. I'll just leak particular like some routes into your Alkira, and I want to start with my partner integration. You provide me this partner network. And as the confidence grows, the rest of the network comes on Alkira too.
Something you said that stood out just now, Kyler, was, this whole VRF scenario. And this is something that's really challenging because data is like the new oil and data happens to be everywhere at this point. It's really important to secure, to understand. And what I've seen a lot here over the past few years is big organizations that are just saying, okay, like say we're healthcare, we have PHI, we have our protected data. We want to have some sort of category of things and we want to start from data at the top and treat it the same all the way down instead of starting from the bottom and trying to work our way back up. So we have a really powerful way of segmenting things where we can do VRF like segmentation and then even like micro segmentation with things that we call groups, where we can just put things in a bucket. Like, okay, from the highest level down, say PHI information, since we were talking about healthcare earlier, we want to treat it the same way for all things that are in this bucket. And then we can actually codify that for developers to where they can just start building and connecting things, and they inherit a policy automatically, whether they like it or not. So if they want to be on prod, it has to go in this group that's tied to one policy. And the beautiful thing about it is you have to create that group for that thing once, and it's going to work across everything that you're connecting, no matter what cloud or on premises. So you can really have an end-to-end segmentation scenario for protected data. Maybe you have a production segment that has no protected data, needs a different set of policies. Maybe it's a little less strict. And then you have sandbox. So you can really begin to peel apart everything, through the lens of data and true security principles from the top down.
That's a very powerful abstraction, and somebody has to set all that up, because I wouldn't necessarily expect the application teams to be in charge of figuring out these groups and setting up security policies and whatnot. So do you typically see in the organizations you work with a platform team sort of sitting as the intermediary configuring Alkira and then presenting it to the application teams?
Yeah, that's a big one. So usually there's a cloud center of excellence or a cloud platform team. I think that actually, and this isn't always the truth, but I would say that it's the truth most of the time, is the larger the company is, they start running into larger company problems. Maybe they have multiple lines of business that they need to treat distinctively separate. And then they realize, okay, we're still one business. We still have the same regulations, the rules, the compliance things that we have to follow, data governance. So we need to get that under control by controlling how we deploy our infrastructure. We've got to get control back. And that's where this cloud center of excellence that is creating these golden templates, it's almost like, I would say, the pivot of enterprise architecture and the newer innovation of different technologies in a sense.
And just to add one thing, like the shadow IT used to be a huge problem as well. So one of the thing is, as you asked, like, what is the line? Till what point the application guys own it, and from where the networking guys will pick it up, right? In terms of connectivity. And in some cases, if you are not able to resolve that, application team would be like, whatever, I don't care about compliance. Let me just expose it to internet. Now here, there is a clear line, and adopting those Terraform and those DevOps principle helps us to define those. One of the biggest customer deployments, what we are doing is the application teams now own their spoke VPCs, VNet, and all that stuff. Once it's done within their CI/CD pipeline, now the Alkira Terraform will pick it up that, okay, our application is ready to go in an isolated VNet VPC. Now, once it connects to Alkira, that's the line you are drawing, right? Where on Alkira, you connect to the CXP, we call it Cloud Exchange Point. Our TGW equivalent would be this Cloud Exchange Point. You connect to the Cloud Exchange Point. Now, within that Cloud Exchange Point and within that Alkira platform, there is a clear line in terms of that you can define with role-based access control. Like it's very granular. Now you can say that security team, you own the policy. Network team, you own the connectivity part. So those lines are clearly separated out in terms of customer outcomes again, where you have an app team, you have a security team, you have a network team, and everyone can own their part of the business and can have that approval process that, yes, I'm done. Now you take over, like through ticketing systems and all that.
Yeah, one thing you said earlier too, Ned, is you asked that question about migrations. Like, what does that look like? And one thing that makes it just honestly very easy to migrate things onto the Alkira platform is, most enterprises today, let's say they're in Azure, they're already using service principals. Or if they're in AWS, hopefully they're using IAM, identity and access management policies and such. If they can wrap their head around it, can be kind of challenging. But we can take those same things. So if you think of like maybe an enterprise already has a pipeline set up, they already have some sort of onboarding process for a VNet in Azure, let's say, for instance. Well, we can do a multi-stage pipeline and use that same service principle that they created the VNet with and attach it back to Alkira. So there isn't a lot of heavy lifting to say, hey, we're this new platform on the block and we're going to make it different for you. We're going to do things different. So you got more moving parts and more things to worry about. No, we want to make it as frictionless as possible for our customers. We want it to be as easy as possible, to adopt, to manage, and to operate in the future.
That role-based access control, but in terms of like the data flow, sounds very powerful and very scalable in terms of enterprises. The traditional network architecture I'm familiar with is you have like a VPN concentrator, and every VPC gets a combination of VPC peers and VPNs. And if you're going cross-cloud, then you have a couple of like VPN hubs. But then when you're onboarding a new VPC or a new VNet, you have to apply an inbound ACL on that VPN concentrator. And just imagine every single destination with all the security group rules, like I'm thinking in a Cisco ACL sense.
Yeah.
And that sounds just impossible to manage because it is at enterprise scale that scales to dozens, not hundreds or thousands of VNets and VPCs. So any kind of scalable architecture like that sounds like I could kick my feet up. And if I can buy a product that lets me kick my feet up, I am going to listen hard.
That's the whole idea. Yep.
Based on how deeply integrated Alkira is into the networking environment, especially once you fully sort of migrated and onboarded, I imagine that has some major implications for visibility and monitoring.
Yes.
Especially because before you might be using like 12 different monitoring products, one for on-prem, one for your branches and your SD-WAN. You've got CloudWatch sitting over in AWS. You've got Azure Monitor and networking. That's a ton of different stuff. Can I kind of chuck a lot of that out and just vacuum up what Alkira has given me?
Yes, you nailed it. So we are in a unique spot, right? As I talked about, and that's where I think sometimes we are tagged as the MCN only solution. But like the reason why I explained it, that we are in a unique spot where we are connecting with all different sorts of networks. And now when all the data flows through us, we have the power of exposing that visibility and monitoring and all that back to the customer. And at the same time, all the point products that you talked about, what we have analyzed, it's close to a $3.4 billion market today from a monitoring perspective, which is going to expand to 8 billion in 2032. So it's a big market. But at the same time, the way we have come up in terms of monitoring, the first part of it is a responsibility on us to provide customers visibility that is necessary to operate the network, which needs to come out of the box. That is our basic monitoring piece where it comes out of the box for free. You have the troubleshooting tools, you have the power, you have the monitoring and everything that you need to order to operate the network. Then everything is available through APIs. You can extract it. You can feed it into other monitoring tools. If you have a ServiceNow ticketing system and all those integrations are there. So that's the responsibility part. Then there is an opportunity part. Like we can enhance that monitoring where we can upsell to the customer. That's where our advanced monitoring piece comes into, where we have deep analytics. We leverage machine learning, AI, and all that. We can go into the details of it. That's the big one too. And those monitoring tools are like flow collection, like having the ability to collect the flows for months and all that stuff. So that comes in advance. So today, the monitoring is a combination of exposing our visibility, like all the traffic that is going through our network, providing the troubleshooting tools. Like for instance, if we are connecting IPsec, as you talked about, Carlo, if I need to look at the logs, right, why my IPsec is not coming up. So it's not a black box where you can't see it. You just go to the connector, dump me the log. You can just see, oh, my passwords are not matching or security keys are not matching and all that. Go fix it. Similarly, the next level, once the IPsec is up, BGP troubleshooting. You have the whole set of BGP logs. Then you want to figure out how my traffic is flowing from A to B, like from branch to cloud or cloud to cloud. You have this whole flow monitoring piece that it goes from this, hits this policy, gets there, and that's how the flow works. Then on top of it, if you want to do ping, right? Ping is the oldest and the most efficient way of just testing connectivity, ping, trace routes, and all that stuff, right? So all those are built into it. And again, the point is that we want to enable our customers to give them the power to use that platform and configure, monitor, operationalize this network the way they want to do it. But that doesn't mean that they have to go and take care of all the mundane stuff that I talked about, that they have to do it by themselves. So it's kind of a platform offered as a service, but you have the power to operationalize, monitor it the way you want it. And we enable our customers by giving them the tools.
I'm laughing about the logging because that seems so basic of like just BGP logging, connectivity logging. I remember building some VPNs with BGP to AWS a couple of years ago. It's been a few years, so maybe they fixed this by now. And I was like, I asked support, how do I get logs for BGP? Like, it's not coming up. Where are the logs? And they're like, oh, you don't get the logs. Why would you want the logs? Open a ticket. We'll take care of it.
Exactly.
And them taking care of it meant telling us to go fix it, like, and not even telling us what was wrong. So just the logs, like, that's incredible. But, you know, secondly, opening tickets and managing flows of work and stuff like that with popping alerts.
Well, tickets are challenging. The way it's always worked in our industry is like, okay, you work on enterprise side and you have to create lots of tickets and shoot it over to a vendor to get something taken care of or looked at. And a lot of times, like I was talking to one of our customers the other day and I was just asking him about the day 2 experience. And he's like, oh, well, he's like, not a lot ever goes wrong. So we don't exactly have to look at it that much. But I guess there could be some improvements, but I don't know. And a lot of times we'll actually create tickets, like we'll see things going on that need attention in customer environments and it'll work the other way. So we're creating tickets to say, hey, this is happening. You might want to look at it before there's even any impact, which is a very powerful thing.
You brought up a good point. So one customer example that we helped out, right? There's a customer who was doing some maintenance, not because of Alkira, but because of some route policy that they started leaking out. And now there are route duplication everywhere. We automatically detect those route duplications. We actually proactively notified the customer that there is duplicate routes we see in your network through our DevOps team. And before it would have caused a Sev1 issue in their environment because that was route duplication with their application, that like one of the critical apps. And then they were able to, oh, yes, we were doing this maintenance. I think we missed this route policy and all that from this. And they had to go and fix it. So that proactive nature of like alerting, alarming, and then DevOps being on top of it, like just notifying those customer mail alias. So it goes beyond the product also, right? Because since it's a platform, we have a heavy DevOps team, which works around the clock. They have advanced alerting and all that ticketing systems that automatically create tickets. And whenever you see tunnel flaps, this route duplication, or even the route churn, right? All of a sudden you have 100 routes and now you are seeing 1,500 routes. Something happened. Is it a planned activity or an unplanned activity? Those notification goes back to the customer. And this is huge. Like which vendor you have seen like doing that kind of diligence to tell the customer. And that's where I think we learn from customer problems and then try to implement it the way it has never been done.
You mentioned AI a little bit earlier, and because it is 2024, we can't possibly get out of this conversation without talking about AI. So, how is Alkira leveraging AI today in your product to enhance what customers are getting?
So I think just from a monitoring perspective, we have 3 different areas that we focus on. First of all is learning and understanding, like collecting the data. Now you want to do the on-demand assistance. From a on-demand assistance, this is more like a conversational, like ChatGPT and all that stuff, right? Just a chat bot where you actually get the information through documentation, through some of the tickets that they already have, enhancing it to provide reports on their topology and all that. It's more like a conversational where you get an easy answer instead of traversing through a documentation, sending out a support team an email and all that, how do you do that? So that's the conversational aspect. And the third one is the pure AI ops intelligence. The machine learning, deep analytics gets used interchangeably with AI and all that. But
Yeah.
That's where the AI ops intelligence. And one of the thing is those deep analytics, like this route churn, right? Proactively looking for anomalies within the network, notifying based on those anomalies. And when it comes to AI, just from a networking perspective, the way I see it is you learn and understand, then you recommend what's the right thing to do. And the third is the self-healing. I think we are, as an industry, it's like it will be few years where we get to the self-healing network. But the stage that we are at is we are learning and understanding the data. We are making recommendations to the customers on what to do and alerting them through alarms and all that. And sometimes giving them advices that this is the best practice, this is how you do it. And then the chatbot aspect of it, where you can retrieve easy information and all that. So that's where we are focusing on. And I think this AI ops intelligence is one thing that we want to add more and more use cases like that, where like keep on constantly detecting anomalies for the customer, notifying them and alerting them on the problems before they occur, actually.
The scariest one of all of those is that remediation, like self-auto remediation thing. You want to tread real lightly on that.
Yes, yes. You cannot blame onto us for not doing it. We can do it. It's just the customers has to gain that confidence in their networks. I think it's more about industry moving as a whole on those self-healing networks, right? Like you can definitely do stuff where you can build enough redundancy. Maybe we can look into our tickets where, let's suppose 80% of the ticket just gets resolved bouncing off the tunnels. That action can be turned into a self-healing, right? Okay, maybe I used to do 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 are not intrusive to the network. Let's just call those 3 steps as self-healing. 4, 5, and 6, where I need changes in my network, it may negatively impact. Let's just leave it to the customer. I think that's where we will go, where we have to analyze that data more closely, and the less intrusive tasks that the support engineer does, like bouncing off the tunnels and all that stuff, just as an example, something that we can actually integrate into our self-healing networks. And the intrusive part, we can just leave it to maturity of those.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm really excited to see where the product has gone because I have talked to you folks before, and it sounds like you've made a lot of progress in a bunch of different areas to make the product more robust and just more useful to end users. If people want to know more about Alkira, where are some good places to go and look?
Sure. So definitely we constantly updates on the innovations. Some of the recent innovation that we have done is we launched our CXP into GCP. We expanded our connectivity into China, which was a huge like use case.
Wow.
And it's not an easy solution. And we have active customers now on those China. And all those updates go in like our LinkedIn page. William and team always do a good job to update customers on the new announcement. Some of the new, very exciting announcements should be out there pretty soon. Like you can go to our website. We have our design zone videos, the other marketing videos that we post on our YouTube. And then if you need anything, just reach out to our like sales@alkira.net, where somebody would be able to get in touch.
Make sure and poke around in the Terraform documentation. It's great. So if you really want a view of sort of what I was talking about earlier, that's the best place to go. It's probably where I spend most of my life these days.
It is well documented, so thank you for that. I appreciate a well-written provider because some of them out there, they're not so great. And I also want to encourage listeners, you folks were recently on Heavy Networking to discuss your new ZTNA portion of the product line. So we will include a link to that episode in the show notes as well. William, Misbah, thank you so much for being a guest today on Day 2 DevOps. And hey, listeners, virtual high fives to you for tuning in. If you have suggestions for future shows, we would love to hear them. Hit either of us up on LinkedIn or send some feedback via packetpushers.net/follow-up. You can find me, Ned Bellavance, at nedinthecloud.com and my amazing co-host, Kyler Middleton, blogging over on letsdodevops.com. And we're both very active on LinkedIn. Stop by. Say hi. If you like engineering-oriented shows like this one, visit packetpushers.net/subscribe. All of our podcasts, newsletters, and websites are there. It's all nerdy content designed for your professional career development. Till next time, just remember that doing DevOps is awesome, and so are you.